The drums echoed down the avenue, banners snapping in the wind as the city roared with pride. Generals basked in cheers, medals flashing like fire in the sun. Yet off to the side sat a Daniel Hayes, a quiet man with weary eyes, his young son gripping his hand. No spotlight, no applause. Just silence, until one unexpected gesture shattered the parade, and every eye turned toward him. Before we dive in, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. Let's begin. The city's military parade thundered down Fifth Avenue, drums pounding like war echoes against the tall glass towers. Veterans lined the sidewalks, some cheered, some saluted, but Daniel Hayes sat quietly on a folding chair with his 9-year-old son, Jacob. Daniel's limp ached in the cold, the old injury that ended his service, and every cheer for the generals on the floats reminded him that he was invisible now, a soldier discarded and forgotten. Jacob waved his small flag eagerly. "Daddy, why don't they call your name too?" Daniel forced a smile. "Because my job's done, buddy. I'm just another face in the crowd now." But then the motorcade rolled past. President Olivia Grant herself stood tall, waving to the crowd. Cameras flashed, the roar of thousands filled the air. Then, she froze. Her eyes locked onto Daniel's. In one sharp movement, she raised her hand in a soldier's salute, crisp and deliberate, directed only at him. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The parade halted. Every camera swung toward Daniel Hayes, the forgotten sergeant. Jacob's eyes widened. "Daddy, she saluted you." Daniel's chest tightened. His mind raced back to a desert ambush, to faces he tried to bury in silence. And as the world watched, he realized President Olivia Grant hadn't chosen him at random. She knew exactly who he was. But how? The salute spread across every news outlet. "Who is the man the president saluted?" Clips replayed on endless loops. Daniel tried to hide, pulling the blinds in his modest 2-bedroom apartment. He didn't want attention, only peace for Jacob. But peace doesn't survive when the whole nation is asking your name. By evening, reporters hovered outside, calling him the mystery veteran. Jacob peeked through the curtains. "Daddy, are we in trouble?" Daniel pulled him close. "No, son. Just noise. It'll blow over." He didn't believe it himself. The next night, a knock thundered on the door. Daniel tensed, expecting another journalist. But when he opened it, 2 Secret Service agents stood there. Behind them was President Olivia Grant herself, no cameras, no crowd, just a plain coat and steady eyes. Jacob froze, staring at her like he was seeing someone from his history book step into their living room. Olivia smiled faintly at him, then turned to Daniel. "You saved my brother in Kandahar," she said softly. "That salute wasn't for show. It was for you." Daniel's heart stopped. He had pulled many wounded men out of the fire, but he had never known who lived, who died. And now the commander-in-chief was standing in his hallway, reminding him of a battlefield he'd spent years trying to forget. They sat at the worn kitchen table, a single lamp buzzing overhead. Jacob had fallen asleep on the couch, clutching his comic book, unaware the President of the United States was across the room. Olivia's voice lowered, almost like a confession. "My brother told me pieces of what happened that night in Kandahar. He said you dragged him out after the convoy was ambushed. But he also said something else, that you tried to speak up about what caused it." Daniel's jaw tightened. He had sworn never to revisit those words, never to reopen the wound. "Ma'am, with respect, that's in the past. Dead soldiers can't be saved by speeches." But Olivia leaned closer. "It wasn't just bad luck, was it? Those men were betrayed." The word betrayed pierced him. His fists clenched on the table. He remembered the faulty intel, the convoy rerouted through unsecured territory, the faces of men who trusted him. He had filed a report afterward, and been labeled unstable, discharged, silenced. Daniel shook his head, pain etched in his voice. If I speak, they'll tear me apart again. I've got a boy to raise. I can't lose him. Olivia's gaze didn't waver. You're already losing him, not to them, but to silence. Children know when their parents are carrying ghosts. Daniel stared at his sleeping son. For years, he'd hidden the truth to protect Jacob. But now the president herself was asking him to do the very thing he feared most. And when Olivia left that night, Daniel discovered a plain envelope on his kitchen counter, marked only with his old unit number. Inside were photographs he had never seen before. Daniel spread the photographs across the table. Grainy images, aerial shots of their convoy, timestamps matching the day of the ambush. Trucks positioned in an area they were never supposed to be. Then another image, crates stamped with a contractor's logo he hadn't seen in years. His chest tightened. These weren't just random pictures. Someone had proof the ambush wasn't an accident. Someone had been watching. The next morning, he tried to go about life as usual. He walked Jacob to school, nodding at neighbors who whispered about the famous salute. But the envelope burned in his pocket. By the time he got home, reporters were outside again, cameras flashing, shouting questions. Mr. Hayes, what did the president salute you for? He slammed the door, sweat on his brow. Silence had protected him for years, but now the world was closing in. That night, as Jacob did homework, Daniel scrolled through news feeds. One headline froze him: defense contractor to testify in Senate hearing. The name was the same as the logo on the crates in those photos. The same company tied to the route change that cost his men their lives. He rubbed his temples. If he stayed quiet, Jacob was safe. But if he spoke, if he confirmed what those pictures showed, he'd be dragged into a storm that could swallow them both. A sudden bang rattled the window. Daniel shot up, heart racing. Outside, a car idled too long, headlights glaring into his apartment. Then it sped off into the night. Jacob looked up, wide-eyed. Daddy, why do people want to scare us? Daniel's stomach turned cold. The cover-up wasn't history. It was alive, and now it knew where he lived. Sleep didn't come. Daniel sat at the kitchen table, the photos spread like landmines before him. Every creak of the floorboards, every hiss of tires outside made him think of men in suits, waiting to silence him again. He stared at the old uniform in the closet, the medals in a shoebox Jacob had never seen. Near midnight, a small voice broke the silence. Daddy? Jacob padded in, rubbing his eyes. He looked at the photos, then at his father's haunted face. Are those from when you were a soldier? Daniel hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, buddy. From a bad day I've been trying to forget. Jacob frowned. But you always tell me being brave means telling the truth, even when it's hard. Did you tell the truth back then? The words hit like shrapnel. Daniel's throat tightened. I tried. They didn't listen. Jacob climbed into his lap, eyes wide and steady. Then maybe now it's time to try again. If you don't, people will never know. And I'll never know what kind of soldier my dad really was. The next morning, Daniel made a decision. He picked up the phone and called Olivia. His voice shook, but his words were clear. If I do this, it's not for politics. It's for my boy. And for the ones who didn't come home. Olivia's reply was steady, then we'll do it together. But before Daniel could hang up, a knock rattled the door, harder, sharper than before. Through the peephole, he saw not Secret Service, not reporters, but two men in plain suits he recognized from his discharge hearing years ago. And they weren't smiling. Daniel opened the door only halfway, his hand tight on the chain lock. The two men stood in the hall, rain dripping from their coats, expressions cold and practiced. Mr. Hayes, one said, voice smooth but sharp. We understand you've been contacted by the president. Best to forget what happened in Kandahar. For your sake. For your boys. Daniel's blood went cold. You're too late, he muttered, heart hammering. The taller man leaned closer. You think a salute makes you untouchable? Ask yourself why you were discharged in the first place. You were branded unstable once, it would be easy to remind the world of that. They slid an envelope under the door, filled with papers, accusations, fabricated reports that painted him as reckless, dangerous. This is what the media will run with if you speak. You'll lose your job, custody, everything. When they left, Daniel's hands trembled, fury and fear tangling in his chest. He stared at the lies on those pages, knowing exactly what they meant. The machine that had crushed him once was ready to do it again. But then Jacob emerged from the hallway, clutching his stuffed bear, eyes wide. Daddy, who were those men? Daniel swallowed hard, shoving the papers into a drawer. Just ghosts from the past. Later that night, Olivia called. Daniel, the press conference is tomorrow. Are you ready? He looked at Jacob asleep on the couch, the boy's small hand still clutching his bear. His voice shook, but it was firm. I'm done hiding. And the next morning, Daniel Hayes walked into a press room packed with cameras, while across the city, the very men who threatened him were already whispering in the ears of journalists, preparing to destroy him before he spoke a single word. The press room buzzed like a hive. Reporters jostled for space, cameras blinked red, microphones stretched across the podium. Daniel stood frozen at the curtain, sweat trickling down his back. Olivia Grant placed a steady hand on his shoulder. You don't owe them perfection, she whispered. You owe them the truth. He stepped into the light. Flashes exploded, shouts flew. Why did the president salute you? Were you really discharged for instability? Do you claim there was a cover-up? Daniel gripped the podium. His voice cracked at first, then steadied. My name is Daniel Hayes. I served in Kandahar. I was told to forget what I saw. Men routed into an ambush because profit mattered more than their lives. I filed a report. And they buried me along with it. Gasps rippled. Reporters scribbled furiously. Then one hostile voice cut through, Mr. Hayes, your own records say you were unstable. Why should we believe you? Daniel's jaw clenched. He pulled something from his jacket, the very photos left in that mysterious envelope. He held them high, cameras zooming in. Because the truth has receipts. And because silence killed my brothers once. I won't let it kill them again. For a moment, the room was stunned silent. Then, from the front row, Jacob stood on his chair, voice small but clear. That's my dad. He tells the truth. Reporters turned. Flashes went off, capturing father and son locked together in that moment. The narrative shifted, from unstable veteran to a soldier fighting for honor, with his son as witness. By the time Daniel stepped down, the room roared with questions. Olivia met his eyes and nodded. You just changed everything. Outside, the men who tried to silence him were already retreating, because the story was no longer theirs to control. And for the first time in years, Daniel felt peace. Not because the nation finally listened, but because his son knew his father had never stopped fighting. The morning after the press conference, Daniel braced for the worst. He expected smear headlines, maybe even threats at his door. Instead, his phone buzzed non-stop with messages from families of fallen soldiers. Thank you for speaking. My son's name won't be forgotten now. On TV, the photographs he released were everywhere. Senators demanded hearings. The contractors' stocks plummeted overnight. And for once, Daniel's name wasn't dragged through the mud, it was spoken with respect. But the real moment came quietly. Jacob walked into the kitchen, clutching a crayon drawing. It showed a soldier standing tall beside a boy, sunlight breaking behind them. Across the bottom, Jacob had scrawled, "My hero is my dad." Daniel's throat tightened. All the medals he'd lost, all the years of silence, meant nothing compared to that paper in his son's hands. Later that day, Olivia Grant called again. "Daniel, the country owes you more than thanks. But I know you didn't do this for politics." Daniel glanced at Jacob, who was laughing as he taped his drawing to the fridge. "You're right," he said softly. "I did it so my boy will grow up knowing his father never quit." As the call ended, Daniel looked out the window. The city bustled on, life unchanged for most. But inside his small apartment, everything was different. The ghosts of Kandahar no longer ruled him. And though he had no medals, no parade in his honor, he had something far greater: dignity restored, his son's pride, and the knowledge that telling the truth had finally broken the silence. Yet as he folded the photos back into the envelope, he noticed one detail he hadn't seen before: a second set of crates marked with another contractor's name. The battle wasn't over. But this time, Daniel wasn't afraid. Daniel couldn't shake it. The new contractor's logo burned in his mind like a brand. Different company, different name, but the same chain of corruption that had cost his men their lives. That night, he sat at the table with the envelope open, photographs spread once again. Jacob padded in, dragging his blanket. "Daddy, you're looking at the sad pictures again." Daniel managed a smile. "They're not sad anymore, buddy. They're proof. Proof that the truth matters." Jacob squinted at the photo. "Then you can show people about that one, too." His small finger tapped the second logo. Daniel froze. Out of the mouths of children. He realized his son was right. Speaking once wasn't enough. The machine would simply trade one name for another unless someone kept digging. The next morning, as news crews still replayed his press conference, Daniel opened his door to find a manila folder lying on his welcome mat. No note, no messenger in sight, just more documents, stamped, confidential. Inside were shipment logs, names of officers, even bank transfers. It was bigger than he thought. When he looked up, Jacob was at the doorway, holding his school backpack. "Are you going to fight again, Dad?" Daniel crouched, pulling him close. "Yes. But this time, not with weapons." And as Jacob left for school, Daniel knew the truth: the salute that had pulled him out of obscurity had only been the beginning. Because somewhere in the city, someone wanted him to keep going, and had just given him the ammunition to do it. The confidential folder weighed heavy in Daniel's hands, but this time it didn't feel like a burden, it felt like a chance. Inside were shipment logs, signed contracts, and proof of the cover-up that had haunted him for years. When he arrived at the Capitol, Olivia Grant was already waiting. No cameras, no reporters, just her, in a quiet conference room. She looked at him not as a president, but as someone who owed him a debt. "You don't have to carry this alone anymore," she said softly. "Let me help you." For the first time, Daniel believed her. He slid the folder across the table. "Then make sure the names of my men are remembered. That's all I ask." Weeks later, the hearings began. Headlines filled the nation, not with scandal about Daniel, but with truth about the men who had fallen. Their families spoke, their names carved into memory instead of forgotten reports. Daniel never sought the spotlight again. Instead, he walked Jacob to school each morning, helped with homework at night, and rebuilt his life with a quiet strength. One evening, Jacob handed him a crayon drawing: a soldier standing tall, a boy holding his hand, both smiling beneath a bright sun. Across the top he had written, "My hero is my dad." Daniel's eyes stung as he hugged his son close. He had no parade, no medals, but he had something greater. His dignity restored. His voice heard. His son's pride shining brighter than any honor. And in that small apartment, with Jacob's laughter filling the air, Daniel Hayes finally found peace. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe for more stories that stay with you.